Welcome back to the Behind the Net podcast. As always, I'm Matthew, your one of your co-hosts, and joined today is my other co-host.
Hey guys, it's me, Michael. We got a pretty fun episode today. What is this, episode 30?
36.
I almost said 37. I was going to be look really stupid if I said that.
Episode 36. We've been going strong, and honestly, with sports coming back, I'm just super energized. Podcast going strong. The Toronto teams are doing great right now, and we have a lot to talk about. I don't even want to waste any time, but quickly, Michael, how are you this week?
I've been good, man. Really good mood as always. Been working a lot, but can't complain too much. What about you?
Of course, same. Been in a good mood, a much better mood now that, again, sports are back. I'm keeping more busy. Of course, I'm writing more for the Leafs Nation. I'm back to gifting Raptors games, as you are back to gifting Leafs games. So that's always fun, and it's just a great time right now, and things are looking up.
Absolutely. We
have a great episode coming up. I'll just spoil it right now. We have two great guests on today. We have Ian Hunter to talk about the Blue Jays, and then we also have Nick DeSouza, one of our fellow Leafs Nation's contributors, to talk about the Leafs. So that's later in the episode, so stay tuned. But before we even get into those, I definitely just we could kind of do a rapid fire for the news that's kind of broken out this week in sports. First, I want to start off this week with baseball, which is arguably the biggest topic that's been happening this week. First, before we actually get into the bulk of it, I want to talk about the Blue Jays. Of course, they're 3-3 right now, and that's been pretty good for the Blue Jays right now. And you'll hear later when we were talking to Ian, but of course, this is more like a sprint than a marathon with this shortened season. So, how do you feel about the Blue Jays so far, Michael? Obviously with they've been through ups, they've been through downs so far. They've blown leads already, but just what do you think of the Blue Jays so far?
I think, to be completely honest, this team is much more watchable than it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone was following the Blue Jays in 2019, at least for the first couple months, they would know very well how tough it was to watch the Blue Jays night in and night out. I can attest to it because I actually worked at the Blue Jays as a sales associate, and people in the crowds were pretty much bored to death with what they saw. And it was true because there's not a lot of prospects there. But slowly, Vladdy came up, Biggio came up, Bichette came up, and the team was much more fun to watch in the latter half of the season. And now all three of those guys are up, plus a bunch of others. It's been much more enjoyable. Yes, this is still a young team. Yes, they still have a lot of mileage left on their careers, and they're still learning what it takes to win. But that doesn't mean this team is not going to be boring. I think even with all the struggles we've seen so far and the inconsistencies, this is still going to be a fun team to watch. I don't think they make the playoffs. I don't know what you think, but I think it's just going to be much more enjoyable than it was last year. That's for sure.
I 100% agree. This team is much more watchable now, and it's just a testament to show, obviously, when you're rebuilding a team like this, you got to give it time. So this is that step in the next direction. And I think this team actually has a legitimate chance of being kind of an underdog to making the playoffs. Obviously, with this new season, it honestly might be a little easier to make the playoffs. So there's that, and I think that just adds to the fuel for the team, the fire and the drive, and I think it adds to the excitement for the fans. And again, it's very early so far, but let's not forget, they could be doing worse right now. A lot of teams have started their season a little, with a worse record, and it's important this season to start off, on a good note, because it's a shortened season. So I think it's great that the Blue Jays, even though they had 3 losses, that's still, better than losing more than that.
Oh, absolutely. And they have been playing well in the games that they've won, but in the games that they lost, they've just looked it's been frustrating to see at times. Like last night, we saw them play a really good performance out of Nate Pearson, their star young pitcher, and then Romano was playing really well, but then they just struggled in the extra innings. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to be seeing all year, like some really positive performances, some struggles, but overall just progression all around. But if there's one thing that I'm worried about, is just if this thing is even going to work. And we're going to talk about this just briefly before we get into our first interview. But the Miami Marlins got a lot of COVID tests recently, a lot of positive COVID tests. And now there's worries about or calls for the season to get canceled. I have to ask you, do you think the MLB could have done a better job preparing for this season?
Well, I honestly do think that they could have prepared a little better. I mean, we do know that the MLB, Major League Baseball, has been like, when they were planning their return to play, it kind of came right down to the wire. You know, it was very up and down with the negotiations. One day it looked like they wouldn't continue playing, and one day it looked like they would. And I really feel like it was an afterthought, you know, like their priority was getting back to play, but they kind of put the whole pandemic in the back of their mind a little. And I was concerned when, you know, you look at the NBA and the NHL doing their bubbles, and then you look at baseball where they're kind of just they believe that they can just kind of travel and go on with their business as usual. And I was kind of skeptical about that because obviously we've been recommended not to be traveling a lot during this time, even if they're, you know, traveling through private planes and things like that. It's just not that safe, and it's also easy to spread when you come into contact with people with COVID-19. But I definitely don't like how it started, and now it looks like there's consequences. And really, I don't know what the league's going to do. Obviously, we know the Miami Marlins are taking a pause to regroup and figure this out. But let's not forget, will this impact the teams they faced? Could this happen with another team? We saw when this first happened, when COVID first reached the NBA back in March, it basically caused all sports to shut down. Could this cause the whole season to be canceled? I honestly think maybe they'll have to take a pause to regroup as a league. But what do you think? Before we get into our next interview, I just quickly want to know, do you think the season could be canceled?
There's definitely potential for the season to get canceled. And I think fans have to realize that there's that possibility. Like, just as much as it's possible that the season does continue on and everything goes just fine after a minor bump at the start, there's just as much of a possibility that another team could get sick and even more could get COVID tests. And then what do? You have to cancel the season at that point. I mean, obviously, it's pretty great. It's an endearing challenge. No doubt about it. But if you don't have any proper preparation in place, you run situations like this. Now, I give the MLB credit. They have recently made some changes. They're now going to make players wear surgical masks during travel, and players are encouraged now to not leave their hotels except for games. So it's one step, but they should have done this right away. And if more players get sick, they'll have no one to blame but themselves for the season ending so early.
100%. I completely agree there. So we'll just have to see how things pan out and what the league decides. But here's to hoping that, of course, the players' safety and their health is the priority at all times. So here's to hoping that no further outbreaks occur and that they can control the situation.
Absolutely. We can only hope for that. But let's just go into our first interview. As Matthew mentioned at the top of the show, our first interview is going to be Ian Hunter, who we've already had on the podcast before, but he was an awesome guest. But we're happy to have him back on to talk about the Blue Jays season, the current outbreak with the Marlins, and just whether or not this season can continue. So let's go into that interview right now. On today's podcast, we are excited to bring back Ian Hunter onto the show. For those of you who don't know, he is the lead baseball writer at Daily Hive Toronto and a contributor at the Jays Nation. You may know him better for his site on the Jays called Blue Jays Hunter. Welcome back, Ian. How's it going?
It's doing well. It's nice to chat with you guys about actual, real, live Major League Baseball in 2020. It's kind of weird.
Of course. I mean, when we had you on last a couple months ago, it was obviously we were just kind of talking about the situation we were in and We were trying to, come up with topics to talk about in the absence of baseball, but now we have baseball back, so it's definitely a lot more to talk about, and we're super excited. But yeah, how have you been doing today?
Yeah, it's been kind of weird, like not having. I mean, baseball has been around, but just like now, this is like right around MLB's trade deadline, right? This is when the season has basically reached the halfway point, and it's all we're at the beginning of the season. Last week was opening. Well, technically, actually, today when we're talking is the Blue Jays home opener, quote unquote. So it's weird. I think like most people, I've lost track of like months and days and whatnot. But it's cool to see baseball back for now, at least.
For sure. I feel like just having sports in general back has given a lot of us like kind of a sense of, busyness in a way. Like even if we're not doing anything, we're just able to watch games, and like you said, for the longest time it felt like we didn't even know what day it is. But now like things are seemingly more in order because we have like sports and games to look forward to on certain days.
Yeah, and it's also like I was talking back and forth with some friends last night, and I was like, wait a second, there's a Leafs game on too? Like this is so strange. Like all the sports are coming on, NBA is coming back. It as you said, it is kind of nice to have something to watch in the evening, and fantasy sports is back as well. I don't know if you guys play that, but it's something
Oh
else
yeah.
to kind of chew up some of your time during the day. And yeah, it's nice to have these things back, even though it's weird to not have fans in the stands and it's weird to not be at the game, but it is cool to have it on TV as a distraction.
Oh, absolutely. Just getting that sense of normalcy is something I've been really looking forward to. But if there's one thing that we've been looking forward to, at least for a lot of Blue Jays fans, was a full season with Vladdy, Bichette, and Biggio. And we talked about this before on the previous podcast, but now that we're actually seeing it in action, what's been your early impressions of the season so far?
I mean, I try not to get too ahead of myself because we're, less than 10 games into the schedule. But I would say, like off the top, someone like Bo Bichette, I would say he's come as advertised so far. Like he's just been a treat to watch at the plate. Like the first game they played against the Rays, like he was working some really good at bats against Charlie Morton, like 7-8 pitch at bats, which I mean, Morton's like a Cy Young caliber pitcher, and you've got a rookie here working a deep count, which is really impressive. Biggio's gone deep, so that's nice to see. I would say with Vladdy, the move of him to first base kind of caught me by surprise, and I think it caught a lot of people by surprise because earlier this year there was no talk of him moving across the diamond. And then, all of a sudden it happened. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. The Blue Jays said, "Oh yeah, he's basically a first baseman now." And I would say at the plate, aside from that homer the other night, it's been a lot of swinging on a lot of pitches outside the strike zone, and it was like the Vladdy that we saw at the end of last year. The Vladdy that was tired and hitting a lot of ground balls. So I would say, again, small sample size. I would say it's been a little disappointing on Vladdy's side, but Biggio, Bichette, I would say have come at as advertised so far.
Absolutely. I tend to agree. Biggio, especially early in the early part of the seasons. I remember the Ray series, he was really effective. And I think what people tended to forget was that he was still on an on base streak from that dated back to last season. And he picked up right where he left off. But I think Vladdy for sure has been a bit of a surprise just of how sluggish his start of the season is. Like only yesterday was his first home run. And even then, it was kind of a bit of luck. So it'll be interesting to see how those three play out. But is there anyone else? Has there anyone else on the team besides those three we talked about that really stood out to you?
I would just say the starting pitching staff as a whole. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but I saw there was a stat. I think something like the Blue Jays, the first turn through their starting rotation, they had an ERA of like 2.35 or something like that, which is I'd say that's pretty stellar, like considering, that doesn't even include Nate Pearson in that first turn. It was Tanner Roark and Jun Ryu, Matt Shoemaker, like all these guys looked really impressive in their starts. And I mean, they're not pitching deep into ball games. I mean, nobody really is because, this is essentially them. They're still kind of working up their pitch counts, but I would say the starting pitching staff as a whole has really kind of been a pleasant surprise so far. So that's and then now all of a sudden you add Nate Pearson to the equation. And it's like I feel like Pearson is must watch or must watch Blue Jays baseball at this point. So he makes a really good starting rotation so far, even better it seems like.
For sure, for sure. And who do you think could be the team's X factor this season?
Oh man, so tough. Might be doing a bit of recency bias here, but maybe I might pick Jordan Romano actually. Especially if this Ken Giles injury tends to if it's a long-term thing and he's out for the season, or if he's out for I don't know, a month or two, which is basically the rest of the season. I'd say Romano has looked really good on the mound so far, and he's throwing like high 90s, 98, 99. He's got a really tight slider. So I think he's someone who very quickly he's probably going to elevate himself to the back end of the Blue Jays bullpen. I mean, he's essentially there as the seventh inning guy already, and it's only a week into the season. Someone like that. I don't know. It really depends on what happens here, but maybe someone like Rowdy Tellez, which is he's a guy who I've kind of gone back and forth on because like he's a first baseman DH. He's not going to impact the game defensively, not the fastest base runner, but man, he got a hold of like he hit 21 homers last year as a rookie, which is still pretty impressive. He didn't even have full playing time, so I don't know. I could see him running into quite a few home runs already. I think he already has one. So I guess I'll pick Rowdy and Jordan Romano, but I'll warn you ahead of time. Anytime I pick breakout players, almost the exact opposite happens. So that might be the kiss of death for those guys, but those will be my picks for now.
I really like that you mentioned Romano. Like I remember watching one of those exhibition games against the Red Sox. That slider you mentioned was really elusive, and he fooled that. I can't remember the batter's name, but it was really good. And we're watching. Obviously, if you guys don't know, we're recording this during the middle of a Jays game where they're the home team against the Nationals, and he just had a very impressive seventh inning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this like it's amazing that the Blue Jays like let him go. Essentially, he was picked up by he was a Rule 5 pick by the Chicago White Sox. I think they grabbed him and then they traded him over to the Texas Rangers. And then last year he came back to the Blue Jays because if you don't keep a Rule 5 on your roster the whole year, they go back to the original team. So Romano rejoined the Blue Jays last year, and there were kind of some signs that he might be a really nice back into the bullpen pitcher. But yeah, I think what he did is he like pared down his repertoire. So he's just fastball slider. And he kind of has this like Ken Giles thing going on. Like he does this little, it's hard to like explain, but he does this little dip where he kind of gets his body ready. And it's very Ken Giles-esque. And he's also throwing high 90s, just like Ken Giles, and also throwing a slider, just like Ken Giles. So I don't know. Maybe Romano steps in, and maybe the Blue Jays don't miss Giles all that much because they've got the Canadian version of him on the mound.
I don't want to say there's going to be a closer controversy when Ken Giles returns, but do you see that there's going to potentially be a conflict of potentially trying to fit both players into the in games, or are we going to see similar to what happened during the Jays' heydays, where Aaron Ward and Tom Henke?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a two-headed closer situation. Because when players are going into free agency, like Ken Giles is, sometimes the managers kind of tend to favor the veteran guys because they also know that those players are trying to to build value. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Ken Giles comes back and he shows he's ineffective and you just can't get guys out or whatever, and they don't send him back to the IL, then that's a different story. But I mean, if Ken Giles returns and he's the same Giles that he has been the last 2 years with the Blue Jays, I think he just slots back into his closer role, and Jordan Romano is either the seventh inning guy or he's the setup guy to Giles. So we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. I think it's going to be really crucial because I have a sneaking suspicion that this might be a long-term injury for Giles, but I'm not a doctor by any means, but you're hoping for hopefully a short stint on the IL.
Absolutely. And it's just, we can only hope that Ken Giles does come back sooner rather than later. But if Romano keeps playing like he has been, it won't be too bad. But I want to just focus now on the starters. I know we have a very limited work sample to go off of for all of them, but which of them have impressed you the most and have impressed you the least?
I mean, I would say probably the one who's impressed me the most. I mean, Hyunjin Ryu. I mean, maybe just because he's, coming over from the National League, the National League West, traditionally a pitcher's division, traditionally a lot of pitcher ballparks out there. So Rio's going to be pitching in a lot of smaller ballparks in the AL East. I thought he handled the Rays pretty decently. He kind of ran out of gas near the end. He was giving up a lot of hard hit balls, but I mean, that's to be expected with a guy who's making his first big league start of the season, right? So I'd pick Ryu, and then I don't know. I feel like no one's really pitched that poorly. Like, I mean, maybe Trent Thornton, but again, like he was decent in his start. He wasn't bad by any means, but it's kind of to be expected as a guy who's, making a back end start. So yeah, I mean a lot can change in the course of a week, but I'd go with Ryu as the most impressive so far, and Thornton is a quote unquote disappointment.
I mean, I know he's not a starter, but I know of one guy who hasn't been playing well.
And that would be
I think I hear his name's pronounced as like Jam Cavilio.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, he's been maybe not him so much taking a lot of flack, but more so Charlie Montoyo. For kind of putting Sam Gaviglio in these high leverage situations, which is really strange because last season with the Blue Jays, Gaviglio was traditionally the low leverage guy. He's someone who's coming in when, the Blue Jays are losing by 5 or 6 runs, or they're up by 5 or 6 runs. He's not really entrusted with these make or break innings. And yet he's now made 2 appearances this season where he's in a tied ball game or late in the game. And luckily tonight, the Blue Jays are facing the Nationals. That didn't cost them. It very could have, but when over the weekend in Tampa Bay, it did, because, Sam Gaviglio came in and he's not exactly throwing gas out of the bullpen, and he didn't have his best stuff. I think he even balked in a run, which is, bizarre to see, but yeah, I think this really should be reinforcing to Charlie Montoyo that this is a guy who shouldn't be entrusted with big innings. I understand when, your pitching staff, you've only got so many guys to go to, and you could have chalked it up to that case in Tampa against the Rays, but this is the second time that this has happened. So I feel like this is a disturbing trend, and I really hope that, Charlie Montoyo stops it, because it already cost the Blue Jays a ball game, and luckily it didn't cost them today, but it could in the future.
For sure. Going into, I guess, talking about the upcoming season or what we have of this shortened season, what are your expectations really for the Blue Jays this season? Obviously, they're taking a step forward from the young, lower expectations from last season, but now it's kind of moving and progressing, and the ball's kind of rolling. So how far do you think they can go realistically in this kind of altered season?
Yeah, I think most heading into the season, um, most people expected them, like, at best they might finish with a 500 record, and as of now, I would say 500 is not really all that too aspirational. Like, for them to win 30 games would be, I'd say that's um, a pretty good yardstick to reach. But the thing that's changed is that all of a sudden the playoffs have opened up now, and it's going to be 8 teams from every league. And I just checked Fangraphs, and like as of this moment, the Blue Jays have a 39% playoff odds, which are like pretty decent. Even if you're going in as a bottom seed in the American League, you're probably facing a division winner, a top team, like the Yankees or the Astros or whatnot. But still, like, I think that's just going to make things way more exciting. Like, to have these like young teams at the bottom facing against these dominant teams at the top. I think it's going to make for really interesting. And like, if somehow the Blue Jays squeak in, I think it's going to be great. Like, if they didn't open up those playoffs, I don't think they would have had a chance. But just the fact that it's a shortened season, anything can happen. There's so much randomness over the course of 60 games. You've got players coming or not deciding not to play. You have teams who are shutting themselves down. I mean, this is all, of course, under the pretense that the season actually finishes, which I'm not convinced is going to happen. But yeah, it's going to make for an exciting season, like, because every game does matter. These decisions that Charlie Montoyo is making has an effect on the game, and losing one game is extremely important now. Not that it wasn't before, but when it's only 60, you're in this pressure cooker environment. So, I mean, 39%, those are pretty decent odds, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And if they do, let's say they do squeak into the playoffs this season, do you think that the Blue Jays should kind of be taken seriously as like a potential underdog, or do you think this should just be, kind of a bonus to the development of this young core?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if this is the time to definitely get your playoff experience, I think that is maybe one thing that could negatively affect a team that hasn't seen the bright lights of October before. Like, it's happened all too often where teams they'll just steamroll a division. They'll win 100 plus games. They're a young team. They've never seen the playoffs before. They get into the playoffs and it's like a deer in the headlights, right? It happens in every league, not just Major League Baseball. So, this might be an opportune time for these young players to kind of experience this firsthand, because I don't think there's many, if any, well, Hyunjin Ryu at least, but there are some players on the Blue Jays right now who have pitched in the playoffs and pitched in the World Series, which is advantageous. But I mean, ideally, you want guys like Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to play on these really crucially important games. And to answer your first question, I mean, yeah, if you're a team and you're facing the Blue Jays, I mean, that's extremely scary. A 3-game series, you could potentially throw Hyunjin Ryu, Nate Pearson, and Matt Shoemaker at you. I mean, I'd say that's a pretty decent starting three. And you should never underestimate a team like that. If it's a 1 seed facing off against an 8, you never underestimate that team, because anything can happen over the course of 3 games. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if they do squeak in, I think that's, as you said, it'll be a bonus. Like, nobody was expecting the Blue Jays to make the playoffs this year. And hopefully they can, if they do, hopefully they build upon that, and it just gives them experience moving forward.
For sure, for sure. I think either way, it's going to be an exciting season. It's kind of like a wild card season because things are a little more in reach, and it's almost like saying, usually they say the season is a marathon, but now with the shortened season, it's looking more like a sprint, and who can kind of hit the ground running a little more, and sustain that for a shorter term.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just look right now, like the Nationals are defending World Series champs, and they've got a 1-4 record, right? Like, I mean, if you struggle out of the gate, that puts you behind, and that could leave contending teams in the dust, and that could also push teams like the Blue Jays or if you want to get crazy, maybe in the Baltimore Orioles somehow sneak out and get, because it is only a 60 game sprint. You're trying to go, win every single game, and make really crucial decisions to put your team in the best position. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm really looking forward to, because this season in many ways is nothing like any other baseball season we've ever seen before. And I think even to the casual fan, it just makes it even more exciting to watch, because you might see some teams in there that you've never seen before, like the Blue Jays.
Absolutely. And I mean, on that note, I want to kind of take you back to, obviously, the last time we spoke. There wasn't even a plan in place to return to play. We were kind of just, it was all up in the air. But I kind of want to ask, what was your initial reaction to the MLB's return to play plan? Obviously, it took a little more time for them to figure out exactly how to do and negotiate both sides. But what was your initial reaction to the final decisions?
Yeah, it was, I mean, as we're seeing now, it just kind of seemed like it was an afterthought. Like, putting this all together, I mean, you see leagues like the NBA and the NHL, they were really careful about this and decided to go the bubble route, which I think is, if you're going to do it, that's definitely the way to do it, right? You have way more control over it. Whereas MLB, I mean, they were negotiating to the 11th hour whether they were even going to play this season. So, um, the funny thing was, because NBA and NHL, they were in the midst of their season, I thought they were actually in a worse position to come out of it, but they were the ones who came out looking like the better ones. And MLB had more time to figure this out, and they somehow screwed it up worse than any other league. To me, it's still, I don't think it's going to work, because you've got teams flying in and out of states with hotspots in the United States. There is no bubble. You can go where you please. There's a lot of self-policing involved, and I'm sure most players are adhering to it, but all it takes is one player to go rogue and catch something and bring it back, and could be a complete disaster, like we're seeing with the Miami Marlins right now. Like, half their team has COVID-19, which is, like, it just blows my mind right now that this league hasn't shut down. So I don't know. I didn't like the plan. I mean, I enjoy that there's baseball on right now, but in the back of my head, I'm like, how much longer is this going to last? If it continues the way it is, it seems like it's only a matter of time before it affects other teams, just as it has the Marlins. So, yeah, it's rapidly changing, right? Next week we could talk and it could be shut down, but I didn't like the way they did it. I think it was not as prepared as the other leagues. I wish they would have more time into it, but unfortunately this is the product that we got.
On the subject of the Marlins, so for those who don't know, the Marlins have been getting a high number of positive tests, and their season's been pretty much on pause for an entire week. Do you think that the number of positive tests was an inevitability, or could a league have done a better job of preventing players from catching COVID?
Well, the other thing too is that there was, even now, I think it was Juan Soto he said he was kind of mad because he kept testing negative, but he wasn't getting consecutive negative tests. And earlier this year, I think it was Sean Doolittle was saying something like, they were getting tested often, but they were still cleared to play, even though they weren't testing negative. So it was just a lot of questions about it. And there wasn't like a really concrete, like, yes, we're doing this. Or maybe they were doing it, but they just weren't, MLB wasn't being upfront about it. Even though I think I saw a tweet earlier this week saying something like the league had made like over 6,000 tests and the majority of them came back negative. But I mean, as we've seen, right, like, it doesn't take very much or very many positive tests to kind of run rampant throughout Major League Baseball. So yeah, I really think Major League Baseball could have done a way better job. I think it's just the league, and it's like anybody right now. They want to be in business. They want to make money. They've lost a ton of money because they can't put fans in the stands, but at least they can recoup some of the costs through like TV revenue. and they're trying to push it through. And I think if it continues the way it does, I think we're going to see very quickly that was kind of like haphazardly put together, and they should have spent more time creating a bubble system like the NBA or the NHL.
Absolutely, yes. I think the question I think people will be asking is just if this season is going to even be finished. So I have to ask you, knowing everything that we know right now and just the state of baseball as it is, do you think this season gets finished? Why or why not?
I don't know. If you had to ask me right now, I thought earlier in the week, I felt like it was on the cusp of being shut down, just because there was like something. There was like 11 positive tests on the Marlin. That's since increased. Um, I don't know. Like my gut tells me I don't think it's going to get finished, just because of this whole system where the Blue Jays. I think in August they're supposed to be flying into Miami to play the Marlins, which is kind of disturbing. The Blue Jays also have more games to play against the Rays in Tampa Bay, so you're going back into Florida. For the most part, they are just staying to their interdivisional games and their interleague games, but it's just I feel like there's way too many variables. That's the thing when the NBA and NHL they're doing the bubble system. They took out a ton of the variables that could make this thing go sideways. The MLB did not. They limited travel, yes, but these teams are still traveling. They're still traveling into hotspots. So yeah, if you had to ask me, I mean, the baseball fan in me doesn't want to see this happen, but I do feel like it's kind of inevitable that the league's going to get shut down. Just because, like, if you've got a team right now, 1 week in, and half of their team's down, like, just imagine what it's going to be like in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. So we will see what happens. I hope it doesn't happen, but I just have this sneaking suspicion that the season is not going to make it to the finish line.
For sure. And do you have any suggestions or ideas that maybe the league could do to salvage the season?
I mean, really at this point, the only thing you could do is like basically put the entire season on pause and just say, okay, we're going to shut it down for 2 weeks. Not going to travel wherever you are, stay where you are. We're going to keep testing you every day and, have like a whatever 14 days and make sure everybody tests negative and then start rolling things up again. But I don't know. I don't see Major League Baseball doing that. It didn't sound like Rob Manfred. I mean, he made comments earlier in the week, but he sounded like he was concerned, but it was not to a case where it's like, oh my, we're going to shut this thing down or we're on the cusp of doing it. So I think the thing is they're being reactionary. They're not being proactive about it. They're just kind of reacting, waiting to see what happens. Fingers crossed, hoping that the season continues rather than putting the system in place that would have protected the players and prevented the spread of this disease. So, yeah, that's how I feel. But I mean, maybe next year is completely different. I don't know. I realize there's no playbook for this, by the way, right? Like every commissioner is kind of making this up as they go. But I think some commissioners are putting their teams and their players and owners and everybody in a way better position. Major League Baseball is. So that's kind of, I guess that's what I would do, right? If it's the way it is, shut it down for a couple weeks, see what happens, and then hope that everybody tests negative and then get rolling. I guess that's the only suggestion I would have other than just scrapping the season entirely and then starting fresh next year.
For sure. I think it's definitely, the outlook on the season is starting to look a little grim, but I personally think they might have to take a break, like you said, and kind of regroup and reconsider their plans. So we'll see what comes about with that. But our final question is just assuming the season does continue as scheduled, what's your super early prediction for the World Series?
Oh man, this is a good one. I mean, I wanted to like scare people and kind of say the Baltimore Orioles, but I don't think that will happen. I feel like the Tampa Bay Rays are like I mean, they're out to a hot start, but their pitching staff is just so good. Like ideally, if you're the Blue Jays, you look at the Rays and you're like, man, that could be us because they've kind of made the blueprint for what a pitching staff should be, and I don't think anybody can replicate it. So I think they are going to. I feel like they're like destined for the playoffs for sure, and especially in a short series. They have some really stellar starting pitching and they can throw it in a short series. Charlie Morton, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, like those are three of the best arms in the American League. Yeah, I guess I'll go with the Rays or maybe the Twins. The Twins are kind of a like I I realized they squeaked into the playoffs last year. They added Josh Donaldson. They made some other pitching acquisitions as well. They're like a really offensive heavy team. Kind of reminds me sort of like the Blue Jays of 2015, 2016. So, I mean, I would go, yeah, with either the Rays or the Twins out of the American League, maybe. And then, it's a popular choice. It's an obvious choice, but like the Dodgers, right? Like they're just, you got Mookie Betts, you re-signed them. You got Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, like an amazing pitching staff. They're one of the best teams in baseball. So I think the Dodgers probably go back there. You figure they've got to win one of these ones, right? Like they just they're there every other year. You figure they've got to get over the hump. Maybe Mookie Betts helps them do that. And then I don't know if I pick another team, maybe the Cardinals, like they're a team who kind of came out of the woodwork last year and nobody really predicted them to make their way into the playoffs. So yeah, I would say the Cardinals, but if I had to pick two teams, I'll go Rays, Dodgers, World Series.
Great picks.
I think that would make a really exciting World Series, even if it was during normal times. This has been a great interview, by the way. Really enjoying this discussion. But before we let you go, we want to ask you one question that a fan asked. It's from Maha Khan, and she asked, "What's your favorite ballpark snack?"
Oh man. I feel like baseball for me is like it always has to be a salty snack. Like it's got to be for me I always go to like corn chips, like Fritos, corn nuts. I'm not a really big like popcorn guy at baseball games cuz to me the popcorn's got to be hot. It's got to have the fake butter on it. So like the movie theater style, you don't really get that at the ballpark. And also peanut M&Ms. Those are, like I'll eat them anytime, but like especially at a baseball game. I remember I forget what series it was. It was 2015. It was one of the playoff games, and we were in the 500 level, and one person brought like one of those Costco sized, like industrial sized bags of peanut M&Ms, and this was obviously pre-COVID, and they just kept passing it up and down the aisle. So we would all take a handful and pass it down to every person. Like it's crazy to think of that now, right? But anyway, yeah, peanut M&Ms, corn nuts, corn chips, anything crunchy, anything salty is good in my books.
Great pick. I always go with the usual hot dog. Always gotta have a hot dog there at the game. But yeah, great pick.
Love that. Popcorn for me too. And I have to say, Ian, thank you once again for coming on our show.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
it's been a blast to just have a chance to talk to you about baseball. And I guess we can only hope that one, Sam Gavilia can get his act together, and two, the season can be finished.
Yes, let's hope so. And the Charlie Montoyo stops putting Sam Gavilia in high leverage situations.
For sure, but
we can only hope.
For sure. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on, and we hope you have a great night.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was my pleasure to chat baseball and hope to talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was a great interview with Ian, as always. I mean, we had him early on the show a couple months ago, and he was great then. And now with baseball underway, so much insight from him.
He's always a great time, always a great person to talk to.
Amazing guy too.
Yeah, exactly. If you haven't already, please check out his work on his blog, Blue Jays Hunter, his work at Daily Hive TO, and the Jays Nation. And he also posts a bunch of GIFs. Those are a lot of fun too. So definitely check that out.
For sure. And now I think we'll move into some basketball talk. And I mean, just as we were recording this, I wanted to address this, but breaking news from the NBA, the New York Knicks have hired Tom Thibodeau as their next head coach. I just saw the notification pop up from Shams Charania, the senior lead NBA insider for The Athletic. And I mean, I think that's a huge move. It's questionable. It's a questionable move for sure. We're not really sure what direction the New York Knicks are heading in, but again, when do we ever know what direction they're heading in? But yeah, I just wanted to get that off. It's big basketball news, and what do you think of that, Michael?
I say it's an interesting hire. Just for anyone that's wondering when we're recording this, Chimes tweeted this 2 minutes ago. That's how recent this news dropped.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely an interesting case. We've seen him have a lot of success in Chicago, like early in the 2010s. Was that a product of Derrick Rose's strong player, just the team as a whole? Who's to say? But he's definitely proved that he can coach a winning basketball team and to the playoffs. And they did come close a bunch of times. The first was in his first season going to the conference finals. His stint in Minnesota wasn't as successful. Only one trip to the playoffs, and he was fired midway through the 2018-19. But I think in general, this could be a good hire for the Knicks. Could this be like the turning point for their team to make it finally to the playoffs? Who's to say? It's too early to call. But they just need to have some stability from both the managerial standpoint and from the coaching standpoint. Hopefully, this is finally stability for them. But then again, this is the Knicks. You never know.
100%, 100%. I completely agree. I think the Knicks are looking to, that this could be their guy that can turn around, especially this young core. And of course, they're aiming for a top pick in this year's draft as well. So they're just looking for that right fit. Of course, Thibodeau is leaning on his resume that he built, of course, with the Celtics as an assistant coach when they won the championship in 2008, and with the Bulls. Of course, his time, as you said, with the Timberwolves was kind of up and down, but it was their first playoff appearance in 14 years. So, you can't fully blame him for that. There was arguably a lack of talent in some seasons, and as we saw, a lot of internal problems between players and staff. So I guess this is his fresh new start that he's been looking for. So it'll be definitely interesting what the Knicks' future looks like and what they have planned. But while we're talking basketball, just quickly, the Raptors, they've started playing. And I mean, as of today, we are recording on July 30th. And the NBA is officially back today. The Raptors don't play yet. They play Saturday, I believe. But it doesn't matter because basketball's back, and we can talk about the Raptors because they played 3 scrimmage games and they went 2-1, and they honestly look so good. And I want to know your thoughts. I quickly just want to say, shout out to the bench. The bench has been insane, and I really think that they'll be a huge piece as to why I think the Raptors will go pretty far, at least probably the conference finals in this year's playoffs. Huge. I mean, again, it was just scrimmages, but they looked good, especially against the Rockets. And, it was a close game, and then they kind of blew them out of the water after in the fourth quarter. That was when they really took charge, especially the bench. So shout out the bench, and I just want to know your quick thoughts on the Raptors.
I definitely agree with you on all the points that the Raptors did look really good in the scrimmages, especially in their last game against the Phoenix Suns. Yes, it was a loss, and usually you'd say, "Oh, they didn't look good," but it's one of those losses that you can't be too mad at. They played really well, and that was a Suns team that was really motivated to play, and they really were trying to get their feet wet and just really set the tone for when they return, because they really want to make the playoffs. I think sure the Suns really want to be in the playoffs this year. But I digress in saying that the Raptors, you're right, looked amazing. They looked really good. And I think this is a team that, just like the Suns from the other night, are motivated. Even if they don't win a championship this year, I think a lot of fans will be happy with what they do because the expectations aren't as high as they were last year since Kawhi is no longer here and Danny Green is not here. But this team still has what it takes to do it. I think this team definitely has what it takes. And we saw from the tournament, for the scrimmages, they looked really good. And I'm really excited to see what they do. Also, I want to shout out the bench's reaction to all the plays, especially during the Rockets game. The Raptors bench celebrations are top notch. None of the other teams compare.
I honestly love it. I love how. I mean, maybe the fact that there's no fans gives, I think, the players a lot more comfortability to be themselves, on the bench. And it's so awesome to see, especially Serge Ibaka. But last note about the Raptors, I do want to give huge props to Nick Nurse, who I think is no doubt the coach of the year, in my opinion. Again, I believe voting has ended for that with the media, but we'll see who wins it. But if you ask me, it's definitely Nick Nurse. Just the way he took this Raptors team, again, lost two of their best players, and still regrouped to be, one of the NBA's best. And I think it's just his ability to switch up plays and really adapt to, what's being thrown at him with different teams. I mean, with Dwayne Casey previously, the problem was that he didn't adapt and he didn't change up things as often as he should have. But Nick Nurse has shown he's not afraid to try new things. He's trying a new lineup, a bigger ball lineup, and it's just interesting to see. I think he's the reason why the Raptors are such a huge underdog and wild card team.
Absolutely, and I'm just looking forward to how they play in these playoffs. They definitely will fit in with the rest of the contenders in the East, and if they make it to the finals, they definitely hold up well with some of the teams. Does that mean they're going to win a championship this year? Who's to say? But I will say this. If the Raptors and Clippers meet in the finals, how sweet would it be if the Raptors won the championship?
It would be really sweet for the city of Toronto, I have to admit. But enough about basketball. I want to just talk a little bit about the Leafs because our next guest is all about the Leafs. So I just want to get your quick thoughts on the Leafs because they had a scrimmage on Tuesday night against the Montreal Canadiens, and they looked good. Of course, it was a scrimmage for both teams. They were just trying to get their feet wet. So I want to ask you, just how do you think the Leafs looked, and especially Nick Robertson, who everyone is hyped about because he is the Leafs' top prospect and he's getting a shot at the NHL right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree that they played really well in their first game back. Obviously, it's a scrimmage, so you can't take too much out of it, and it doesn't really count for anything. But I think overall, the Leafs looked really well. And Robertson, too, I think overall had a good first impression in the NHL. Yes, there were a bit of nerves. I'd say in the first period, he took an uncharacteristic penalty. I mean, by uncharacteristic, like it's not the kind of thing you'd really expect him to do. But I think it's just more trying to get adjusted to the different play style and just the physicality of the players because you don't really get that physicality in the CHL. But he definitely plays like he belongs. Just today, just right now, the Leafs PR just tweeted that Robertson remains on the third line with Kerfoot and Kapanen, which will likely be the line he's on to start Game 1. And I think that he's definitely got a chance to be not only be in the lineup for Game 1 and beyond, but also make an impact. I think this is a guy that's is hungry, motivated, really wants this, and I think the Leafs will be much better for it.
For sure. I mean, my opinion is pretty much the same as yours. We know Nick Robertson is hungry as ever, and honestly, he could grow up into being one of those super serious, hard-working, robot-like players like we see with John Tavares, even like Kawhi Leonard in a way. But that's always good because he has a great work ethic, and he wants this roster spot, and we know that, and he's impressed in the first scrimmage, and I think the Leafs will give him a shot these playoffs. So we'll see because he's played great again, and we'll just have to see. That third line is looking great now. A lot more offensive power just by his insertion, and I'm just excited to see what the Leafs can do in their first round series. But with that, I think we'll go into our first guest who can tell you guys a lot more about the Leafs and their upcoming playoff series. We have Nick DeSouza, a fellow contributor for the Leafs Nation. Me and Michael right there. We just started. So we'll go right into that interview right now. Today we're happy to have Nick DeSouza on the podcast. Nick's a fellow contributor for the Leafs Nation and one of the co-hosts for the Everything Leafs podcast. Welcome to the show, Nick. How are you today?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks a lot for having me on. I'm really excited. I think we're only, 3 days away from Leafs playoff hockey, so I'm super excited for this one, to talk about it today.
It's definitely an exciting time, and I mean, that kind of just leads into our... Actually, before we get into our first question about the Leafs, I did want to ask you, of course, so you're a fellow contributor for the Leafs Nation. Me and Michael just joined a couple weeks ago, and everything's been great so far. But, of course, you've been there for a while. So how did you kind of get into writing about the Leafs, and what was your, journey into writing?
Well, I think just as a kid, I always wanted to do, sports journalism. And then I think till grade 10, and then I kind of took a complete 180 or 360, I guess it would be, where I think in grade 11 I pretty much changed to all science courses, and then went into healthcare. So now fast forward years later, and I'm completely not in journalism or any sports, any sort of sports writing. And then a friend of mine messaged me and said he was writing for a site called Armchair All-American. And this is now dating back to probably 2014, 2015. And I just started writing articles here and there, and then started writing for Editor and Leaf. I think in 2016 I started there and was there for about a year. I know you guys were both on Editor and Leaf. I love that site. I thought it really kind of got my foot in the door in terms of, writing a place where a lot of people are listening, and, the comments there are great. So you always know if you make a mistake.
Yeah.
So, and then I think with the Leafs Nation, it's almost 2 years now that I've been there. It was actually Mike Stevens, who at the time was the editor at Editor and Leaf. So I was done with Editor and Leaf because of my schedule. With school, I just couldn't write every 6 weeks, and I don't know if they still have it, but back then, if you couldn't write every 6 weeks, then the site would kind of automatically have you off. But and the editors there were great, bringing me back on and everything. But so anyways, I wasn't writing for them anymore. And then after, I think Mike Stevens and I were just talking, and he said you should write for the Leafs Nation. And I said that'd be awesome. So he did me a big favor. He talked to Adam Mascaris, and then I guess the rest is history.
Awesome. So for you, it essentially started as kind of a side hobby, and then it kind of, he kind of got more into it. And yeah, I have to say, so your articles are, some of my favorites to read about, analyzing the Leafs and just those types of articles. But it's always so insightful, and it's just great how, like you said, it kind of started as a hobby, and then it kind of developed into something that you could be really proud of now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, I think the last couple of weeks with Leafs Nation, John's done a really good job of bringing in some really good writers, including both of you. So I think I'm just excited to learn a lot from everyone that's coming in. So, and just in time for the playoffs, so it works out.
100%.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's just go into the Leafs talk now. That was great to hear, first of all. But in terms of just Leafs play, we only have, one exhibition game and a bunch of practices to go off of. But just based on what you've seen, what have your impressions of the Leafs so far?
Well, I think they're playoff ready. I think that the couple weeks that they had in phase 2 has kind of, I was really impressed with the speed of the game on Tuesday. I thought they looked a step ahead of Montreal. And unfortunately, we only have one game to really judge them on. And and they only have one game to tune up before, like literally game one is on Sunday. So I think they've done the best that they can, and the organization in general has done a really good job making sure that these guys are ready. And I think they have a step ahead of the rest of the teams, and I think that they believe that too, based on the interviews and what's been said in training camp. So they have a tough matchup. They have a team that is almost the polar opposite to them, but I think they're the favorite, and they're probably the favorite for the first time in this core's in the last 3 or 4 years. Like, definitely they're the favorite in going into a playoff series. So I expect them to win.
I think we all expect them to win too, but we all know as Leaf fans, this team has the capabilities of getting our hopes up and letting them down. But that's just putting it lightly, though. But if there's any players that you've seen in just this brief time that has given you reason that this team can't do it, who are the players that you've been really impressed with?
I guess the easy answer would be Ilya Mikheyev. Just a player that had really bad luck this year in terms of his injuries. Seems like he was really hitting his stride. I really liked him at even strength when he was playing earlier this year, and then had that big injury. And kind of this break from hockey has given him almost a second chance here to kind of salvage the season. So just based on how everyone's been saying in terms of him playing at training camp and how he looked on Tuesday, I thought he fit perfectly with that Tavares and Marner line. Just his skill set, like his speed and his ability to puck hunt, and even a little bit of finishing ability. I think he's the perfect player to go there, especially in the absence of having Janssen injured. So I think that would be the easy answer. And that line in itself is going to be playing against top competition. So against Columbus, I think they're the better line than the Dubois and Borstrand line. So they're going to be played a lot, and I think they're going to have to bring it. So I'm excited about Mikheyev.
Oh, of course, I'm excited too. And I think what a lot of Leaf fans maybe didn't realize at the time, but looking back now, is just how much of an impact he has on the lineup. And you can tell just by the difference between how the Leafs were playing just before his injury when Keefe took over, and since and after he got injured. Like, he's very valuable to this team.
Oh, of course. And I think you bring up a good point there, because I feel like this break is it's almost like we're going into a new season. Like, even amongst the fans, like we're excited. We see the team coming back. And it felt like right before the break, it just felt like it was almost like so much was happening. Like, we still weren't over the kind of the Babcock firing and the backup goalie situation. And then the Zamboni game happened. And it just felt like we were, rolling down a hill going into the playoffs. And this break and then the injuries, obviously. So I think this break has just given them kind of some time to figure out what they are. And I think they look like a really strong competitor going into this playoff series. Of course, they have to play an extra 5 games potentially, rather than just going into the usual first round. But I think there's reason to really be confident about this current team. They have depth that I don't think they've had in the past, and even like having Sandin as your 7th defenseman is valuable when you're planning on going on a long run, and having guys like let's say it's Engvall, who doesn't play in game 1, having Engvall and Patan and Dennis Malgin, guys that can really come into the lineup and make a difference. And I just don't know if they've had that in the past.
For sure. And I completely agree with your impressions there. I definitely want to ask you, obviously with this return to play, what are your thoughts on the whole bubble situation and I guess the return to play format?
Yeah, I guess time will tell, right? I think thus far they've done well. I mean, we haven't seen any cases that have come out. But, I think with the NHL and the NBA and all these leagues, you kind of have to cut them some slack, because it's a new situation for everyone. They've also never, faced anything like this, and they have to kind of think on the fly as well. So, I like that they've given, the bubble includes some places that these players can get out and play golf, and I think they have a barbecue area near BMO Field, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice that they've given them, kind of some places that they can also go out and have fun, because I mean, the Stanley Cup winner is going to be in there for quite a while. So it's nice to see them also take into consideration the players and their mental health as well.
For sure. I definitely think the NHL did a good job of giving them a lot of access to, a lot of amenities to kind of pass the time while they're here. Also, so far it's been going successfully. I mean, there's been no positive cases, but let's just keep hoping for the best in the future.
Of course, I think that's just the most important thing at the end of the day, right? Is the players' health, and I mean they're going out there to kind of put on a show for us. So
absolutely,
yeah, it's definitely the most important.
Absolutely.
All we can really do as fans is knock on wood that it doesn't get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, like back to the Leafs though. Honestly, probably the biggest player that everyone seems to be talking about right now is Nick Robertson, and what could he bring to the Leafs during these playoffs. I want to ask you, I mean, after a few days now, how do you think Robertson did in his debut, and do you think he'll become the real deal, or at least live up to those expectations that people are setting for him in these playoffs?
Yeah, I think his ceiling is quite high. I think he's going to be a top 6 forward. Now, with that said, he's still 18. Making the jump from the OHL to the NHL is huge. And especially for a second rounder. And I know he's kind of surpassed those expectations of being a second rounder just because of how great his past season has been with Peterborough. But, I don't think he's going to be like a top 6 winger or perform like that this playoffs. And I don't think he has to be. I think he just needs to give that third line an extra kind of boost and get that shooting talent in there, because the Leafs have really struggled producing from the third line and the fourth line this year. And a lot of that has to do with injuries, but now that they're healthy and having Robertson there, having that shot, his work ethic, I think that became apparent very early to a lot of Leaf fans, is how hard he works off the puck. And I don't think that's something that we're going to see stop. I think even in 2 years, 3 years, when he has a solid, spot on this team, I don't expect him to just all of a sudden stop working hard. I think that's just the type of player he is. Mm-hmm. That's the type of player he was with Peterborough when he was scoring, more than a goal a game. So I think that's one thing to be excited about. And I think he's just going to help that power play, the second power play anyways. They kind of haven't had an identity this past year, and especially since they moved from back when they used to split the power plays and they had Marner on one unit and then Matthews and Nylander on the other. Once they started loading up the first one, I just felt like they never had an identity on that second power play, and having Robertson there just gives them a nice focal point to kind of build around.
Absolutely. And you bring up a really good point about helping the bottom 6 get going offensively. One of the big storylines was just the lack of production from the likes of Kerfoot and Kapanen, among others. And in this first game, the best line was the Kerfoot line, as we saw Kerfoot score, 2 goals?
2 goals, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's been pretty impressive to see.
I think we really questioned the third line coming into this playoffs. And the thing with Kerfoot, I think that I don't want to say he's been unfairly kind of judged this year, but I just feel that maybe he didn't look as good on the left wing with Tavares and Marner as a lot of people expected. And then when he wasn't there, he was on the third line as the center, where I don't know if he got like the best wingers all the time just due to the injuries. Kind of sounds like I'm making excuses for him, but I think this playoffs is a nice little sample that we can really see what he really is going to give the Leafs. He's been strong defensively this year. He's been pretty good in the face-off circle. So, he's not known for goal scoring. You probably expect some assists and good defensive play from him going forward. But I think with Kerfoot, we're really going to see just that stability going forward and what he really brings to that third line in this playoffs. And when it comes to Kapanen, I think I was really excited about Kapanen anyways. I think that he played really gritty with that sandpaper. That I think that's when he's at his best, when he starts to kind of stay away from the perimeter and really start to challenge forwards by trying to go to the net. I think he had one chance where he passed the puck to Robertson and he almost scored, and Kapanen cut in rather than turning back. And then the other one was obviously on the Kerfoot goal, the shorthanded one, where, Kapanen was going pretty quick. He was in tight, and he made a little move, which kind of caused the rebound for Kerfoot to score. So that was really exciting for Kapanen. I just love that third line right now. I think it has enough speed and hard work on that line that they can really pressure the other teams, the opposition. And I just don't think that Keefe can be scared of having a third line anyways, go up against the other team's top line, for example, if they get caught off a face-off or an icing. And I just don't think the Leafs have had, especially after Kadri got suspended last year, I don't think they had a third line that was like that they could be confident going up against the other team's top line if need be.
Absolutely. All we can really hope for as Leaf fans is that third line gets going, because if all three lines are rolling, that's going to be great for the Leafs. I want to just talk for a moment about something that I've been thinking about for the last little bit, and it's just going to be the on-ice like reaction of players. Like, we saw this during all the exhibition games. Yes, it was an exhibition game, but we saw the players kind of feel a bit reserved in their celebrations, like it's more like business as usual kind of thing. Do you think that we're going to be seeing a lot of that during these playoffs? Or do you think that was just the reflection of that being a meaningless game?
I'm hoping that it's exhibition. You know, when you look at other sports, I guess the other ones that have really that have meaningful games would be, let's say, like the English Premier League. The celebrations are still pretty, they do still celebrate, especially when there's a lot on the line. I think about, for example, like UFC, that they've been running for a couple of months now. The celebrations have still been good there. So I guess based off of that, once the actual meaning of the game and starts to ramp up, once the playoffs start, I guess we hope that, this is an optimistic answer, but we hope that the celebrations are really out there, because the Leafs have some good ones, especially Matthew.
For sure. And now going into, of course, the upcoming series that the Leafs have to play. You recently previewed the first round series against the Blue Jackets, so that was a great piece as well. For any listeners who haven't checked it out, definitely check out his series preview on the Leafs Nation. But I mean, you highlighted a whole bunch, but essentially, what are your keys to a Leafs victory?
To the Leafs victory is, well, first of all, I think they need to get to dangerous scoring areas. That's something that Columbus does really good, is keeping them to the outside. Now, I have a little caveat to that, because when I look at it from Columbus's view, a big problem they have is that even if they keep to the outside, the Leafs have enough shooting talent that they can score. I mean, even in the games this year against Columbus, the goals were, a ton were from the power play, but one was that Matthews goal where he just roofed it right over Elvis's shoulder from the hash mark. Another one was a Marner goal around the hash mark. So they really don't need to be in the slot area to score, but from the Leafs perspective, like, they need to get to those dangerous scoring areas. It's something they struggled with last year against Boston, another team that really does well to keep the opponents to the outside. Another one would be their breakout. I think that Columbus scores a ton of goals on the forecheck. So the Leafs this year, we've seen a very different breakout from them. As soon as Keefe came into play, we saw a lot more short, like multiple short passes. But it was nice to see on Tuesday that the Leafs also did a few stretch passes. Now, I know that kind of got, a bad rep when Babcock was there, but I think when done in moderation and done at the right time, stretch passes are extremely important, and they're going to be important against Columbus. So I think a bit of both in terms of and being dynamic in your forecheck, that's going to be really important for the Leafs, because Columbus's forecheck is ferocious, and they transition from winning the puck back on the forecheck to generating dangerous scoring chances really quick. So I think that's really important for the Leafs.
Absolutely. And on Columbus' side of things, you mentioned that their forecheck is going to be very paramount in keeping the Leafs from really getting anything going. And one of the other things we were hearing from Columbus's standpoint was their implementation of a power kill in an attempt to throw off the Leafs' power play. Are those the kind of things that we could expect to see from them to try and upset the Leafs?
Yeah, I think from Columbus's standpoint, like, the template's like pretty set. Like, they do a very good job of limiting rush chances, something the Leafs want to do. They want to be skating. They want to be in a track meet. Columbus does really well of turning the opposition's 3-on-2s into 3-on-4s because they have such good defensive forwards that are going to come and back check and help out their defensemen. Another thing that Columbus that I would personally kind of want to exploit is, and the Leafs really haven't improved on this end, is defending the cycle. So if I'm Columbus, it sounds cliche, but you want to get pucks in deep, you want to get on their defensemen, and you want to start their cycle, because we've seen in the past that even under Keefe or Babcock, that the longer that this Leafs team is in their defensive end, the more problems that occur. Like, Leafs' best defense is offense. It's staying in the offensive zone. It's keeping puck possession away from their net and doing most of their defending in the neutral zone, where they have a ton of really good neutral zone defenders like Dermott and Hall and Muzzin. So, and Sandin when he does play. But so I think that's what Columbus needs to do. Try and spend as much time as you can in the offensive zone, but you also can't commit too many players because you don't want to be counterattacked by the Leafs.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be a very, very close series. And I honestly think it'll go, to 4, probably 5 games. And I'm just excited to watch, honestly, as a neutral, kind of a neutral standpoint even. But if they fail to advance, what do you think the Leafs could do in the offseason to improve?
Ooh. I definitely think that if they lose this, just being kind of the temperature around Frederik Andersen, and I don't want to make this too much of a hot take, but I think that if they lose this, just due to Columbus really doesn't have too much shooting talent. So I think that if they do lose this, Anderson's going to have somewhat of a tough series. So I think that's something that they might have to look into. It's now been 4 playoff series. I'm definitely not saying that Anderson's, it's only his fault the past couple of playoff series, but he's probably the only reason that they're there in the first place, but or one of the main reasons anyway. But I think that there's a ton of goaltenders that are going to be available this summer, or not this summer, this offseason. So I think that's one route that they might have to look into. I still really believe in Freddie. I think he's a phenomenal goalie. He's had a tough season, but I think he needs to win a playoff series with this group right now. The other thing is I wrote an article, and not to plug my own work, but I wrote an article a few months ago looking at some underrated right-handed defensemen. So I think these are defensemen that right now are kind of undervalued by their current teams, whether that's playing on a shelter third pairing when they could be playing on a second pairing, or they're the 7th defenseman when they should be in the lineup. I think that's a route that the Leafs could go. They did get Mikko Lehtinen, who I'm not really sure if he can play on the right side, but just having another right-handed defenseman there, because right now the only one signed is Justin Hall, and if you want to include Timothy Liljegren, but I wouldn't say that he's a legit NHL. He's legitimately going to be in the NHL next year for sure. So I think that's another way that they can go in the offseason if they lose, or even if they win. I think regardless, that's something they can look into.
I think absolutely. I think if the Leafs fail to advance, much like after last playoffs, Kyle Dubas has, some thinking to do about the next steps, just like how he had to after last season.
I'd be upset though. I think we all would.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's just hope it never gets to that, because I think a lot of Leaf fans are hoping that this is the year that they can do something in these playoffs. And like you said, Freddie does need this a playoff series win just to boost his confidence. Just before we let you go, we want to ask you: do you think this team can go deep on a deep run? Why or why not?
I think they can. I think any time that when you have an elite offensive core as good as the Leafs, you always have a chance to win. Now, I know that there's questions about their defense, but the thing is, when you have an offense that's so good, you really don't need to be as good defensively. I think if the Leafs can be even mediocre defensively, that they can go far. We've seen that with teams like Pittsburgh in the past. And when you look at it, last year, and I don't want to bring it up last year again, but they were close to beating one of the best teams in the league. They have a tough route again, where they have Tampa, and they probably have to go through Tampa or Boston or both. So again, like last year, they were pretty much, one game away from advancing. So I think that they're right there. I think they're a contender right now. They just need to perform. I think when kind of the going gets tough, and they need their players, they're good players, not to get suspended. So Kerfoot's going to be in the spotlight for that. He can't have a bad hit, especially if DeBrusque comes near him.
Absolutely, yeah. I think this Leafs team does have what it takes too. We can only hope that they actually do realize those expectations, because the last thing we want to see is this Leafs team struggle yet again, and all the narratives are going to come out of it.
Of course, I know that. I think the management in general is tired of hearing those narratives, but I completely understand where those people come from in terms of expecting them to be a little bit tougher and better defensively, because historically the teams that do win are able to win one-on-one battles, and they're able to kind of tough it out when the going gets tough. And so I definitely understand that side of the coin too, but you just hope that the Leafs kind of get over that hump sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. So those are all our questions, and honestly, first I want to say thank you for coming on, and I guess we just can't wait for hockey to really get started.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys. I think, like I said before, I'm just really excited, like both of you guys, to be on the Leafs Nation, and I think we have a really good team right now, so I'm excited to see kind of the work that's put out there during this playoff run, and hopefully it's a long one. That way, we can continue to shine and do some good work.
100%. We've only been there for a couple of weeks, and so far the experience has been so great. Honestly, the whole team is unreal. Even to our Slack chats, everything's just so everyone's just so nice and friendly and connected, and I love that. Do you want to plug your social medias and where the listeners can find your work?
Yeah, sure. So you could find my writing at the Leafs Nation. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Nick DeSouza _ and you can listen to the Everything Leafs podcast, where myself and Kevin Papetti of Maple Leafs Hot Stove break down the Leafs. Usually we do the Marlies and prospects as well, but right now obviously the AHL is on shutdown. So we'll be doing post-game podcasts for the playoffs. So you can find that at Leafs Nation or at my Twitter. So
awesome. So again, if anyone who's listening has not checked out Nick's work yet, I highly recommend it. He's a great writer, and his analysis is on point always. So definitely check out his work at the Leafs Nation. And thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Well. Another awesome interview. What did you think of that, Matthew?
It was awesome. Nick's such an amazing guy, and just make sure you guys check out his work, because I assure you won't be let down by any of his articles. They're so insightful, and his analysis is always so great. But I think we want to keep this ball rolling and head into the our NBA redraft. I know we took a break last week because we had such a content-filled episode last week, but we're continuing. And this week we're doing the 2011 NBA redraft.
Okay, first of all, great job on the pun. You're still in my job now.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yes. So as Matthew said, we are doing the 2011 NBA redraft. We didn't do it last week just because of time constraints, but I can assure you that we're coming back strong with probably one of the best drafts already for this NBA draft redo. I can already tell what the first two picks are. We don't need to go too much into it, but Matthew, what are your early impressions of what this NBA draft's going to be?
This NBA draft is honestly, like, now looking back, like it hasn't even been like a full decade since this draft occurred, and I can honestly say it's probably one of the best drafts we've ever seen. I won't say it's the best, the 2003 draft, the 1984 draft, those are still, the 96 draft, those are all still very high up as the greatest draft of all time. But this is up there. Just the amount of quality stars and superstars that are up there makes this a really a really big draft. A lot of impact players that impact the NBA today.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm really looking forward to doing this redraft. And let's not waste any more time. The last time we did this, I had the first pick for the 2010 draft. This time, Matthew's going to go first. And Matt, why don't you kick us off with probably the unanimous first pick?
This one's pretty easy because I believe this player stands above the rest of the superstars in this draft. But, I mean, the Toronto Raptors fans got to enjoy him last season, and he signed with the Clippers this season. And, again, no hate to him, I don't think, from any Toronto fans, because he went home. He went home, and that's what it comes down to. And, just a superstar with San Antonio, Toronto, and now Los Angeles. Kawhi Leonard. What can you really say about him that hasn't been said already? Arguably a top 3 player in the league. Probably you could say the best player last season in the whole NBA. And just he could arguably work his way into an all-time great position. One of the all-time greats, because 2 finals MVPs, 2 NBA championships, 2 defensive player of the year awards, 4-time all-star. You know, his resume is already stacked, and he's only 29, so he still has a lot more to go.
I can say a few things about Kawhi. He's a fun guy. He's a board man that got paid. Ha, ha. And I can think of 4 bounces that will define his NBA career.
For sure. You couldn't have said it any other way. Honestly, just his work ethic is unmatched. I think that's what a lot of people realize, and I think that's what boosted him to the top. And in this redraft, just an easy first overall pick, but we'll keep it going. Who do you have second overall?
This one is, I think, looking back, was probably the second best player in this draft. And it's not to say that this player is bad by any stretch, but like when you compare to the guy who just went first, his career is not like as impactful, but he is one of the Splash Brothers, and that pretty much spoiled it right there. Klay Thompson. That's
exactly who I had at second. Klay Thompson has been just an amazing force. One of the greatest shooters of all time, and he's right next to arguably the greatest shooter of all time. I'd definitely say Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. And Klay Thompson is probably, if not the second best of all time, he's right up there. And he's been consistent his entire career. He's been just as helpful to the team's dynasty. And we've seen it last year in the finals, just how big of an impact he made. If he did not get injured in Game 6, he was going off. He could have willed the Warriors to a victory in Game 6.
Absolutely. I have to ask you something quickly. Who's a better sidekick, Klay Thompson or Scottie Pippen?
That's tough. I think both are underrated in their own ways. I think Klay Thompson could definitely be, a number 1 option on any other team that doesn't have a number 1 option. I think he's that good. I can't say who's better. They both play different styles, completely different styles. Both teams are built on different styles of play. But I think they complement their superstar, which is Steph Curry and Michael Jordan, perfectly.
Absolutely. I'm going to slightly go. I agree. It's a tough one to gauge, but if I'm going to make a pick, I'd probably give just the slight edge to Klay, only because we saw Scottie Pippen in his number 1 role. Yes, the Bills did really well, but his actions during the 94 playoffs will probably leave a big stain on his ability to lead a team. But that's not to say he's a bad player. He definitely could have. If he had the leadership role from the start, he probably would have done it really well.
For sure. So I have my third overall pick, and this one was hard. I'll actually admit, and I know a lot of people, I'll say this. It's very close, because I'm just gonna say it now. For me, it's between Kyrie Irving and Kemba Walker, and I'll give my hot take right now. I definitely do like Kemba Walker a lot more to have on a team than Kyrie Irving. I think he brings more success around him. And I think Kemba Walker has been more consistent, but I won't say that. I will say that Kyrie Irving is a game-breaking player. He can change the course of a game with his play. He just needs to be more consistent. And again, we know there's been troubles with just how he conducts himself with the team. and it's hard to bring success with him sometimes. But I'm gonna take Kyrie Irving here, but it's been really close, and I was about to take Kemba even above Kyrie, but I think I'm gonna go Kyrie for this one.
I think
Very
Kyrie's
close.
a good pick. Yeah, I think he had a really good start to his career.
Kemba
And,
Walker is so underrated, especially when he was in Charlotte. I think it comes with the market, but he's been so consistent, and I would say he's been, the best guard in the East for the last few years, and he's getting more credit there in Boston now, so I'm happy for that. But this one's about Kyrie right now.
Oh, absolutely. I think you made a good pick with Kyrie. Yes, he fell a couple spots, but I think he's definitely deserving to be in the top 3 for sure.
Let's not forget his time in Cleveland was unmatched. That's where, a lot of his superstar talent really shined. In Boston, he kind of had trouble being their number one option and really clicking as much as he wanted to. Obviously, he missed a lot of games too. And I think it brings back to the Kemba Kyrie argument that Kemba seems like a perfect fit in Boston where Kyrie couldn't really fit. But Kyrie's been so far good in Brooklyn. Again, he's been missing out, but we'll see how he plays with Kevin Durant in the next couple seasons.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to now the 4th pick, and I'm very happy that this player is still available because he is one of the most underrated picks from this draft, and I think he's one of the biggest gems of this draft, being originally selected 30th overall and going on to become a multi-time All-Star. And his story is awesome. Before I just get into his name, just how he came to be getting to the NBA and the struggles he had to endure just to get to where he is. He's definitely worth all the the success he's been getting, and that is Jimmy Butler.
Awesome pick. Jimmy Butler has again another player who's he's definitely a leader on a team, number one option guy, and he's just been kind of bouncing around because he's been trying to find his perfect fit, and I think he's found it now in Miami. What's not to say about him? 5-time NBA All-Star, 2-time third team, All-NBA third team, and his defense is great, 4-time defensive second team, and he won Most Improved Player in 2015. So honestly, there's not a lot you can't say about him. I think he's found his spot in Miami, and he's leading them to success.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that he's found success everywhere he's gone because this is a player that deserves success. Considering his upbringings and how he was homeless at one point. This is a guy that you want to root for because these are the kind of stories that are inspiring.
100%, and just a superstar talent. Can't put it any other way. He is a superstar in this league, and he has those game-breaking abilities. And we'll see how Miami progresses. They look like they clicked instantly.
Absolutely. Why don't you go with the 5th pick?
So thankfully, the player I was just talking about also fell into my lap. So I'm glad I picked Kyrie there because I also get to pick him here. Kemba Walker, super underrated player, getting more recognition now in Boston, but still I feel like is underrated and probably, I say, the best guard in the East this season. He's been the most consistent, and I really like him. But yeah, with my pick, Kemba Walker.
I definitely want to mention that the Boston Celtics are a much better team with Kemba Walker than they were last season and the year before with Kyrie Irving. Mm-hmm. And it's weird to say that those things, but it's true. I've been really impressed with how they've been playing. I think this might be the team that makes some noise out of the Eastern Conference. If it's not the Milwaukee Bucks or the Toronto Raptors, the Celtics are right there.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, it's not just about putting together superstars. Kyrie Irving is a superstar, and he has that superstar talent. But I think Boston has a better fit with Kemba Walker. I think he just fits into their system much better than Kyrie did. And I think that's what really brings them their success. Even though, some people might not consider him as much of a superstar talent as Kyrie Irving. But for me, Kemba's my top point guard in the East. But we'll move on to the next pick.
Ooh, this is gonna be interesting because
number 6,
the top 5 we're pretty easy to go through.
Mm-hmm. But we'll try to keep it shorter here, so we'll just go kind of rapid here.
Of course, yeah. Okay, how do I go about this? There are so many players I could be taking here. Really quality players too. But I think I'm gonna go a little bit off the board here. This is definitely going a little bit off the board, and I'm going to take Tobias Harris at number 6.
Nice. That's a good pick. Yeah, Tobias Harris is just a solid NBA player. And this season as well, he's been playing really well with Philadelphia. And we've seen it during his career, especially during his time last season with the Clippers. He's kind of grown into this really solid, dependable player.
Absolutely. And I think he's fitting really well on Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was definitely an interesting dilemma. They had to decide whether to keep him or Butler. And while Butler probably is the better player, for sure, Tobias Harris is a good player in his own right. I think he's fitting very well on that team, like as one of the top 3 options.
For sure. So with my 7th pick, I'm going to take another big, Nikola Vucevic from the Orlando Magic.
Excellent. That was one of the players I was considering taking.
Mm-hmm. He's been great, and his progression was a little slower than some of the superstars that we see, or some of the stars that we see today. But he's grown into an all-star now. Last season he had an all-star. He was an all-star, and this season he's been a solid player as well.
Absolutely, yes. Vucevic is one of those players. Like, I think the Magic have something going there. It's weird to say. Like, yes, they have never really realized their potential fully, but they're a team that can do some damage.
For sure.
If all the right pieces come into play.
For sure. They're just looking to find those players. They just need to fill in those gaps. But I think Nikola Vucevic is a mainstay for many years to come for them.
Absolutely. Okay, so now at the number 8 pick. This one is a player who I think definitely defied the odds after the draft, and now jumps all the way to number 8. Yes, he's not the same player he once was, but he's still a productive player, and he's still kicking it with the Washington Wizards, and that is, of course, Isaiah Thomas.
Man, Isaiah Thomas, I could talk so much about him, man. Just such an amazing player, and like you said, defied the odds. And honestly, a couple weeks ago, I was just looking into, watching highlights, especially back in 2016, 2017, his kind of his prime really in this league. When he was with the Boston Celtics, man, that was insane. Like, I can't even put it any other way. He was Mr. Fourth Quarter. He was honestly like willing that team of really a team that was still trying to rebuild from the Kevin Garnett era. And he willed them to multiple playoff appearances, and they even went pretty deep in the playoffs too. So that time with him, especially 2017, where he was looking to be an MVP candidate, 2016 as well. Just he jumped up to, like, honestly a top 5 player those couple seasons in the league, and I would have said probably the top point guard in the East during that time, if it wasn't Kyrie or Lowry. But yeah, that's all I have to say about him. I mean, it's unfortunate that injury troubles led to him kind of regressing, and I really hope he finds a really good fit, or he finds his game again. But Isaiah Thomas, what a player.
Absolutely, I agree. All I can really say is I hope he can get over his injuries. He's better when he's on the floor, and he's performing really well. Not just because of the fact that he's undersized, but also just the fact that he made the jump from like 60, the last pick in the draft, to one of the best players in the league during his peak. Like, this is a player that can still ball. I think if he gets healthy, this is a player that can still provide value to a lot of teams.
Let's not forget the size disadvantage he's went through all his life, really, all his career. I mean, he's 5'9". I mean, we don't see players that short anymore and that small. And he was fast, and he played so well, and he shot really well too.
Absolutely. We're down to our last 2 picks. Let's quickly go over them. You're up first with number 9.
So with my 9th pick, I'm going to take a player that Raptors fans are really familiar with, and that's Jonas Valanciunas, who plays for the Memphis Grizzlies now. And I really think he's been growing a lot more, especially with the Grizzlies. The last couple seasons, it's been hard to find that fit with Toronto. He's been kind of inconsistent. I remember when he was drafted, though, he came out of the gates as a rookie as well, like very promising. I just don't think his fit was perfect in Toronto. I think Toronto found a better fit with Marc Gasol, so that trade worked both ways. But I think Memphis is, I think he's developing really well with Memphis right now, and honestly could maybe even reach an all-star caliber player in the next couple seasons.
Absolutely agree. He's been developing really well. I think it was really tough to see him go like in that trade, but when you look back at it, you can accept that that trade had to happen. But Valanciunas, great player. He deserved to be have a lot of success in Memphis, and I hope that he can be a key part of that team when they return to playoff contention after this year and beyond.
For sure. And now let's close it out with your final pick.
Okay. This was definitely the most difficult one to pick because there's so many players like I'm going to be leaving out, and I'm already going to know there's going to be people very upset with regardless of which direction I go. But at the end of the day, I knew that this player had to be taken in the top 10 because he's definitely had a great career, and that's Enes Kanter.
Enes Kanter, definitely. And again, another player like if you know his story, of course. Just a great story and how he's made it in basketball as well. But again, just a great player, and he's become a really solid rotation player. Although he kind of fell in this draft from 3rd overall down to 10th, but definitely just a solid rotation player and really someone you can really rely on off the bench, even in your starting lineup on certain nights.
Absolutely, too. This is a player that's definitely good on both ends of the floor.
100%.
Two-way players are still super valuable in this league, even if they're not like the superstar players like Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi is the best two-way player in the league, but Enes Kanter is like definitely a great like sixth man option. Like you still need those kind of players on your team, and I think Enes Kanter fits that role extremely well. Yes, he probably shouldn't have gone 3rd overall in the NBA draft, but he's still a top 10 worthy pick in my eyes.
100%. So now let's close out this episode with a few of our honorable mentions that didn't make the top 10, but there's still so much talent in this draft. We have to give recognition where it's due. A couple of names that I had listed were Tristan Thompson for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Torontonian from Brampton, Bismack Biyombo. I'm sure Raptors fans remember him, and the crazy playoff run he had in 2016 with the Raptors.
And everyone's dad.
Markieff Morris and Marcus Morris. Obviously, the brothers who are kind of the LA brothers now on opposing teams. That's always cool, but they are very solid players. How about you? Do you have any names?
A couple players. One player that I was really sad to leave out was Bojan Bogdanovic, and a great scorer off the bench. Like he's been excellent everywhere he's been, and I remember he was one of the bright spots on those Nets teams that were really struggling in the early portions, like after the failed trade to get Kevin Durant, Paul Pierce, and I can't remember the other guy's name off the top of my head. But yeah, a great player. Another player that comes to mind is Brandon Knight. Unfortunate how his career has turned out, but he's definitely a worthy player to be taken in this draft. And Chandler Parsons, another player that's been ravaged by injuries. And one more player I have to mention. Have to make sure this is the same guy. Yes, Raptors legend Corey Joseph was also taken in this.
Corey Joseph was as well, and I also want to say Reggie Jackson and Nikola Mirotic, also solid players in the NBA who've had their time. But just such a great draft, honestly.
Excellent, absolutely agree. So that's going to be it for the 2011 draft. Excellent draft, like you said. The 2012 draft will be next week, and I have to say, I'm looking forward to that one too. I just took a quick glance at what the stats are for some of the players. I think we might have another case of the 2010 draft on our hands.
2010 or 2011?
Like for 2012 when we go for next week.
Yeah. There's a lot of talent in that draft. Obviously not as much as this draft, but it'll be good. So that's next week, so stay tuned. But I think we'll close out the episode now. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you so much, and hope you guys are back next week listening. Actually, Michael, are you going away next week? Is that next week?
Oh, not next week, but the week after. But
Okay.
yes, in a few weeks, I will be up to the cottage for a much needed R&R time.
So we will take a break in 2 weeks, but next week we will be back with more content. But to close out the episode, as always, you can follow me, tweet me, message me at my Twitter, which is at Matt_Rodrigo_.
And you can follow me on Twitter at the Leafs IMO and find both of our work at the Leafs Nation. By the way, Matthew has an article coming up possibly today or maybe tomorrow at the time of recording. I'm really looking forward to it.
Spoiler alert, it's about Nick Robertson.
There you go.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
For sure. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day and catch you guys next week.
Bye.